Professor Wesley, thank you for your time as always. This brinkmanship is very serious. Putin putting on a show. Will he deliver in terms of an invasion? We hope not, of course, but what's your sense?
I think a full-scale Russian invasion is probably unlikely at this stage. It would be enormously costly, I think, for Russia in terms of just deepening and hardening the hostility of the West towards Russia. The possibility is that there will be some sort of guerrilla-style little green men invasion, that they will increase guerrilla activity. I think that's much more likely. What's interesting to me, Kieran, is that actually Putin, through this brinkmanship, is actually bringing about what he was hoping to avoid, which was, the much closer integration of NATO with Ukraine and Ukraine's interests. It's really interesting to see the United States and other Western European states really stepping up to the plate in terms of not only sending arms into Ukraine, but also stationing forces at Ukraine's borders as well. So, the stakes are really high here for Putin, and there is every possibility that he will eventually back down and be humiliated over this.
When you look at the reasons behind it, what does Putin say is his motivation here? What was the catalyst? We know he has concerns, as you articulated there, that Ukraine is moving further into the arms of the West. But was there a moment? Was there a decision? What was it that brought on this latest build-up?
Look, it's hard to point to a particular event that's occurred. What we do know is that ever since Putin has come to power in 2000, he has strongly believed that the West has diddled Russia, that the West has moved to increase its own influence within what he sees as Russia's sphere of influence, or its near abroad. So those are the states of the former Soviet Union that gained independence when the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991. Obviously, the three Baltic states have become members of NATO. That is irreversible now. But what he is really worried about is other countries like Ukraine, like Georgia, like Belarus joining NATO as well, which would really bring NATO, which he sees as a hostile presence, right up against Russia's borders. And so this is, I think, his attempt to decisively make sure that NATO does not expand any further. That's what he's asking for. He's asking for guarantees that Ukraine will never be part of NATO. I think the fact that he's made a blatant demand makes it extremely hard for the West to capitulate to him. And so I think he will be sorely disappointed. He will not get that guarantee. And if the West were to give that guarantee, it would be highly damaging to Western interests and to Western unity.
I spoke to Ukraine's diplomatic representative in Australia yesterday, who was adamant that they would be fighting to the end in terms of defending their country. What's the overriding view in Ukraine? Is there a Russian element in terms of the population that are sympathetic towards Moscow, or is it all of that view that they want to defend their borders and stay removed from the powers of Putin?
My understanding, Kieran, is that ethnic Russians that are heavily predominant in Western Ukraine and in the Crimea are pro-Russian, but ethnic Ukrainians who are overwhelmingly outside of those areas that are currently under some form of Russian control are becoming ever more anti-Russian, and that determination to fight, from what I've been reading about the situation, is hardening. And of course, Russia does not have a happy history of invading territories, as we saw from what happened in Chechnya, and the possibility of a long-running guerrilla war that Ukrainians will continue to fight if Russia does invade must be somewhere at the back of Putin's mind, and he must remember the terrible losses that the Russian army faced in that situation in Chechnya.
If we look back to that period where Putin did assume power, there was a moment in time, wasn't there, where there was hope that the Russian opening or the end of the USSR would lead to a greater democratisation of that country, but that just hasn't eventuated.
Look, yeah, it's really interesting. There have been periods of hope that there would be a rapprochement between the Putin regime and the West. Of course, early on, George W. Bush said he could see into Putin's soul, and then when Barack Obama came to power, he symbolically pushed the reset button on the Russian relationship. But I think what you can see is a gradual hardening of an anti-Western stance from Putin and his governments, and a steady authoritarianism creeping into the Russian state. And while the trappings of democracy are there, certainly the elections that have been occurring have not been free and open and fair, given that so many opposition figures have either been killed or incarcerated or restricted in what they can do.
Professor Michael Wesley, Deputy Vice-Chancellor International at the University of Melbourne, thank you